Well, happy Monday to everybody out there. Big Easter weekend, Corey. How was your weekend?
Hey, it was great. The weather's starting to get a little more pleasant up this way, and it sounds like midweek we should be on to springtime.
Yeah, that's good. It wasn't your neighbors to the north may argue with you just a little bit on the spring weather, huh?
Yeah, I tell you what, our friends up there in North Dakota, they got hit hard right around Minot there. Golly, I think upwards in the big, 30 plus inches up in that country. Our thoughts and prayers sure go out to those guys that are. I talked to Gene Loader up there today, and they're still digging out, still trying to find cattle, and it sounds like it was rough up there.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, just the pictures. You don't have to be on social media very long to find some pictures of what those guys are going through calving cows right now. And so uh, maybe some warm weather will be on the way, green up their country and shine a little optimism back on the cow-calf man in North Dakota.
Well, I tell you what, I listened to a podcast last night with Cody Sankey and the guy that owns the Vermilion Angus out there, the Goggins. I think the guy, Joe Goggins, yeah.
Joe
And,
Goggins. Right.
and he said his granddad told him that you got to lose a few to make sure that you got the green grass in the spring and got the feed to feed them. So
There you go.
it kind of comes, especially in that country, it comes with the territory.
Right, absolutely. You bet. Hey, this episode this week is the Four Brands Hereford Alliance, Corey. This
You
is
bet.
Mr. Richie Oakes and his crew. They're really excited about their upcoming sale. It's in Foss, Oklahoma. It's the second annual Four Brands Hereford Alliance sale. It's at Ben Bransom's sale facility in Foss, April 30th at 1 p.m. It's also available online at liveauctions.tv. The sale will have 40 powerful Hereford horned and polled bulls, 60 very fancy young pairs, including lots 53 to 64. It's the pick of the Vanderwerk Hereford's top 2 and 3-year-old females. You can find more information or view the cattle. Contact Richie Oakes at 580-572-8395 or look for the catalog online. It's the Four Brands Hereford Alliance sale. Videos are available at liveauctions.tv. Those cattle will be available for viewing in Foss beginning Friday, April the 29th. The Four Brands Hereford Alliance sale. So if you're in the market for a Hereford bull, Richie Oakes got 40 of them to come look at. So thank you, Richie, for seeing value in what we do, and good luck with your sale. So
Yeah,
speaking
absolutely.
of sales, pretty hot one out west this week on our good friend CCI Live.
Yeah, the Cromwells and Ricky Day, the Floyd family, and the Kevin Newman family down there in Texas had them the best of the best steer sale. 32 head of steers, averaged $13,366 to gross $427,700.
Wow.
Great sale. Had a top seller on there of 50,000 and a second one at 49,000.
That's getting her traded off. Those guys in Texas, they are this time of year, they're all going to win Fort Worth. So
Absolutely.
I do like that. I do that. It's competitive in that state. So hey, speaking of competitive, we got one of our corporate partners is with us tonight. Our good friends up at Mineral Point, Wisconsin. Brock May is with us tonight with May Cattle Company. Brock, good to have you.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on. We appreciate it.
You bet.
What's the weather like in Wisconsin? Are you getting any of the North Dakota cool?
We got about 1.5 inches of snow this morning, but you'd never know looking out there now. Pretty well melted in. Our ground's thawed out now, so everything we're getting for snow is just kind of soaking in and making mud. So
been jackpotting this spring, Brock?
Yeah, we've been jackpotting here the last couple weekends. In between that, we've been kind of breeding on some virgin heifers. That we're breeding some Angus and some semi-virgin heifers, and then been going jackpotting here. As you see, these two in the pictures here, the steer in the bottom right corner was reserve grand in one ring, and then the heifer in the top left, she was grand in one ring, reserve in the other. And that heifer is actually she's a pays to believe out of the same profit broker cow. She's a maternal sib to our bull payroll that we own with Griswold's and Jed Waitche down there in Millsap, Texas. So yeah, that's a maternal sib to him. We're pretty proud of her. That's one the Sarah Sullivan bought from us, and we're kind of campaigning her. She looks nice. We're pretty proud of that one, and I'd say the maternal side on that bull is pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, you said you've been breeding some heifers there around the house, Simi and Angus. What sires did you and your dad choose this year to breed your heifers to?
On the semis, we've been breeding them to Lover Boy.
Okay.
Just a really nice job. And then on the Angus, we've been doing Sexed Marble.
Okay.
For the Angus calving use. So that's what we've been going with, those replacement heifers. Just making sure we get them stuck, get a calf out of them, and hope to be high quality with those two sires as well. So,
absolutely, you bet. Yep. Show season this time of year, I mean, is it starting to dwindle down for you just a little bit? Starting to get state fair on your mind, or is things still ramped up on the steer and heifer side?
Yeah, these past couple weekends we've been showing pretty hard, and that's when we have our shows in the state of Wisconsin. So all of our in-state cattle here the past couple weekends, and then the next few weekends to come, we've been getting them out, getting them clipped down, trying to get that hair to shed out here. We need to be thinking about getting in the cooler room here about the 1st of May. So we're really taking them tight. The first couple weekends we maybe leave them a little fuzzy, try to save some of that hair for the next few weekends, but now it's time we're burning them down pretty good now and getting them right, and they should be shucking that hair, and we'll be getting state fair on our mind here in the next couple weeks. So
Brock, do you still get Bob out there mowing them down?
Oh yeah, he still helps me every now and then. I do most of it, but sometimes we'll get in a bind. We got a bunch of cattle to clip, and there's a chute in the back, and then I kind of clip in our cooler room now. I set up a chute in there and some lights, so we can split up and get multiple done at one time if we need to. But most of the time, he lets me do that. He takes care of checking heats and feeding the bulls and all that stuff. So.
Hey, so tell me real quick, when he clips, does he still paint their feet before he starts?
Hey, no, only if we're going to picture and video, and we got to paint.
When I was a little kid and your dad and Gerald were selling cattle together, I grew up sitting on the show box, and that was back before you could buy twine in a box, and it was a rope, and I had to sit there as a kid with the scissors and cut
it up.
Bob May would always paint their feet black before he ever clipped anything on that calf every time.
No kidding.
Yeah. That's just something I always thought. I don't know. I always thought you had to do that. So
we dang sure, before they go to the ring, we're picky about making sure their feet are black, and if we're gonna get a picture and video of them here, even in the grass, we make sure to paint their feet too. So
we did.
Yeah.
Well, Brock, I'll be honest with you. It's a pleasure. I know we're just getting started with this corporate deal with you guys, and I know from the start when I visited with your dad about what we were doing, I called and asked about Purina, and he said, "Wait a minute, let's back up and punt. I see value in this too, and Brock and I'd like to be involved with you." So I don't know what's going to happen throughout the year, but we're excited.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. We're glad to be involved, and we've been feeding Purina ever since I was 12 years old. That steer I showed in Kansas City, Silver Bullet, in 2005. That was the first calf we ever had on Purina. We were feeding him Fitter's Edge, and boy, we've been believers ever since then. We try to put all our customers on it, and if they can't feed it, we at least make sure they're on their supplements. And boy, that their motto is feed greatness, and we really feel like you're getting what you pay for when you buy the Checkerboard brand. So
that's good.
we're glad to be partners with them. So.
Right. Okay. Well, hey, Brock, thanks for being on. You take care, and if you run into your old man, you keep him dug out of the snowbank.
I'll try. He's down in your country right now.
Oh, yeah. He's kind of a snowbird, though. He sees the weather getting bad. He gets out there with that with all them bad joints.
Yeah, on let's see, it was Thursday afternoon. He must have checked the weather, saw we were getting more snow, and he took off for Oklahoma. So.
Exactly.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. I look forward to watching the rest of the episode.
Appreciate it, Brock. Tell your family hi. Oh, man, high quality cat right there, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Reputable operation and sure great feed company, that's for sure.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of reputable operations, I'm telling you, when we started this evolution series, I know a lot of it was a hope and a prayer we could get everybody gathered up. And I'd say for the most part, the guys that want to be involved, we're going to have them. And I was extremely excited when I got to visit with Dean, and he was excited to share the story of not only Throttle, but to talk about Flush and Meyer and double stuff. And then John Griswold will be with us tonight to visit with the maternal aspect of this, building this Club Kef bull over the years. And I don't know about you, but does it get any bigger than the two names we've got tonight?
Oh, I tell you what, it's going to be something else. And just to watch this deal like we had, I mean, those of you that haven't watched last week's episode, I encourage you to watch it. You listen to Paul Clapp and Bob May. That was basically the introduction of key cattle to the English breeds, right? And it added stretch and growth, and we were trying to get them big and tall and long as we could. And they talked about, Sugar Ray, Eldino, Black American Gigolo, Nero, all those bulls doing that, right? Well, tonight we're going to hear about more of the, hey, we've got to work on the cow herd, back in the 80s. We got to get these cows good. We got to make the cows better so we can make the steers better. And I think that's what we're going to hear about more tonight is more the maternal side. And then, of course, the Sugar Ray influence in full throttle.
Yeah. And I think what we're going to find out is how those guys blended this key cattle you just talked about back into some main Anjou cattle and some shorthorn cattle as we start to work into tonight. You guys are going to really going to see where this evolution deal is going to start to take shape. And with that being said, it's our pleasure to welcome Dean Kephart to the Cattle Drive Live, as well as John Griswold. So, guys, thanks for taking time to be with us this evening.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Brad.
You bet. Corey, get us going here. I really don't know where to start. I know you're excited, so
we'll just jump in here. Sure, in terms of the steer deal, obviously the next bull that come along in terms of evolution is Full Throttle. So I guess just give us a little bit of a background story of how that bull come to be, Dean.
Well, I started out and I bred a lot of black power play, and then I switched over to Sugar Ray pretty well. 95% of everything I was breeding to Sugar Ray, and seems like all bulls that something was going to take his place, and I bought a set of 3/4 mane cows from Deanie Dillard that he had got out of Canada. And they were 3/4 mane cows, and they were Epinal cows. And I bred those cows to Sugar Ray. And at that point, there was some Sugar Ray sons out there, but it just seemed like there wasn't none of them could just hit quite right. And anyway, we kept him around, and he was a fall-born calf at that time. That's all we raised was fall calves. And we actually took him and his mother to Denver and displayed them. And all the Texan guys was wanting to buy him and cut him for, a steer for Fort Worth and San Antonio, Houston or something. But anyway, typical deal, a calf that of that age, it's hard to get semen on them. And so, they kind of get kicked aside. It's a lot of young bulls that don't produce semen the first year. Something else will take his place the next year. And anyway, I had enough faith in him, and I bred a lot of my cows after I got semen on him, and we were getting along selling calves pretty good. So he took right off. The calves went to winning, and the rest was history.
Awesome. When you said that you had to wait on him just a little bit in terms of making semen, and then you had enough confidence in him. We've heard your podcast when you run Genuine JBH with Brad Hook. You talked about just blanket breeding that bull because you had faith in him. Did he work the way you thought he was going to work?
I thought he did. At that time, I think we were taking wanting some cattle with a little more muscle, and he definitely wasn't a Cavanese. So, I mean, you kind of had to pay attention what happened. Different than some being born right now. If you did have to hook the chains up and you pulled one, he was probably pretty good, which our feet and structure was not as big an issue then as it is now. But the reason we didn't have semen, he was a fall calf, and everybody that was looking at cattle at Denver on display and stuff, are spring breeders, and it's just a fall calf just can't produce any semen hardly for that first hitch. So that's why we were just a year out on him.
Yeah, there would not be very many of those bulls that produce semen in the fall that were displayed in Denver that made it a second year. That would be a rare commodity for sure.
Right, and it would have been the same way when we went to some of them other calves that we raised, like Flush and stuff. They were fall calves, so you just don't have any semen on them for them guys that's wanting to breed cows. They're just not mature enough and old enough. They're just flat not old enough. They're 8 or 9 months, and it's just hard to get semen out of a bull at that age. We all know that.
Then then tell us the story. The next one in evolution would be Full Flush, a son of Throttle. How did he come to be? Was that a design mating and embryo, or
yes, he was an embryo. I purchased that cow from Roger Haney in Western Springs, South Dakota, and I'd go up there and kill some time for a month or two and go to about everybody around there and try to buy what I felt like was pretty nice young cows. And his mother was actually a power plant buck is what she was. And Roger, I felt like, was raising a lot of nice maternal type cows at that time. And I always purchased a trailer load or two from Roger, and a bunch of them Chad Thompson's dad, Ron Thompson, and all that whole crew up there. Most of them still around, and their kids is taking over now.
Right. So when you got started, and we talked about Throttle and Flush, we'll just talk about those two bulls. Back up just a little bit. We talked with Bob May last week, as well as Paul Clapp, and they visited about when they started with that set of bulls, those key bulls. A lot of those cows were cold-blooded. You visited with us privately before we started about the value you saw in that maternal genetic, and you were up there buying cows, you were breeding cattle prior to Full Throttle. Talk about the maternal side for you. Throttle didn't just happen on accident, did he?
Well, the cows what I was doing back then was, when it all started, we was all English and imported bulls. And I started AI cows, went to AI school in 1968. So I went to AI cows with ampules back then, and I done some semis, but I liked the mains. One reason the main cattle's hair was softer. Just, I mean, we didn't have a lot of the genetic defects that's going on now to help it, but they were still hairier cattle that you could put under fans and foggers and still grow hair. And then the udders and they were a notch bigger than our Hereford's cross Angus cattle. They were smaller cattle back then on a lot of them, and these things were a little bigger, and it took a bigger animal to win a deal. Not probably as much to them as some of the cattle now, but they were more extreme, and you couldn't get those cattle out of just some of the straight little old Hereford Angus cattle that was out there.
Hey, John, that back when those throttles were winning, you were buying, and I mean that's when you were really blowing and going in that show steer deal. What was it that set those throttles apart? Because it just seems like that era, if you didn't have a throttle, I mean, it was just like taking a bazooka to a knife fight when you had a good throttle. What set them cattle apart?
Well, they were so stout, and they had the look. And like Dean said, those cattle, they wanted, it was time to get them a little stouter and thicker. And that throttle, he give them all the power, and he give them a look. And what Dean said about I think what Dean was way ahead. I mean, the guys in South Dakota were breeding them, but like I said before we started, while the rest of us were up there buying club calves, K-Bar was up there buying them cows and buying good cows. And I mean, he was ahead of the curve because he knew that those cows that had breeding and had mane in them, and you could trace the pedigrees on, and they were good all the way back. That's why, in my opinion, and they were a little more moderate. I mean, he wanted them chubby and good looking, and I was always drawn to cows like that. And I think, in my opinion, that's why things work so good at Dean's.
Gotcha. Was full flush the same way for you, John, when Throttle come along, when the full flush craze hit? I mean, we talked a little bit about some of your earlier bulls that you were promoting just in terms of chill factor and things. I would say this, the very first, if we want to call them power cows, was a chill factor. That 602G full flush deal that wins Fort Worth. What year would that have been when the full flush 602 won Fort Worth?
Oh, it was in the 90s, I think.
That 602 cow, in my opinion, was one of the very first cows that people went nuts over.
Dan Sullivan had. She was a chill factor out of the Cropa 602 cow. Yep.
Okay, yeah, there you go. There you go.
Wasn't that a full flush out of her that won Fort Worth at Tracy?
Yeah, that was the hot ticket there for a while. Dan Sullivan sold a number of them that won a lot of shows, and they were always full flush out of that. Then he actually cloned that chill factor. I think he had half a dozen of them clones. Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm talking about full flush. I remember we all talked about Dean with full throttle, and everybody's like, man, if we could just get a because he was a little harder calving. If you could just get a throttle son that was easy calving, you'd really have it. Well, sure enough, guess who bred him? K-Bar, full flush, still give them the same look and that wow factor, but they were quite a bit easier calving than Throttle. Wouldn't you say, Dean?
Oh yeah, they were a lot easier. Definitely, you could sure slide in on your 3-year-olds and breed them, and you may touch one, but it wasn't much of a train wreck. But yeah, he was a lot easier. Little different through his shoulders and stuff, and even a little freakier through that front end to get them things out of there. So they were a lot easier.
Right. What was he on the maternal side?
Well, full flush, he was a power plant a buck. So he was a half semi quarter or half main quarter semi is what he was. And then of course Throttle went back to that 3/4 Epinal cow that originated out of Canada.
Gotcha.
You went up to Canada and bought that cow?
No, at that time, Deanie Dillard at Cross Plains, Texas was going to Canada, just buying Maine cattle left and right, and had a lot of satellite herds down there around Brownwood, Cross Plains, Calvin Fryer had a bunch of them. And when they'd get all them cows in, Deanie'd call me, and I'd go through there and sort through them cows, and I'd buy a trailer load or two a month from them guys, you know, that just cattle that was females that was built like I wanted them to look like, and to try to raise club calves or replacements out of.
Right.
Yep.
So not only did you have Full Throttle, and as John alluded to, everybody says we needed something that was like him but calved easier, and you were just fortunate enough to raise the next one, Full Flush. What was that? I mean, what was that like? We talked to Bob May and Paul Clapp about selling semen, and they said they went to Denver and sold semen, and they if you didn't watch it, you need to listen. I mean, you need to listen about how they marketed semen, but there is an infamous semen sale book that floats around, Dean Kephart's sire book. When you started to market your product, I would say, were you the first to market it in terms of a flip book?
I don't know. I don't. It was just kind of probably an accident deal, and probably trying to get maybe on the edge. If people aren't looking and they're not paying attention, you're not going to sell them much. And
Right.
We had a little gimmick figured out that sold quite a bit of semen on the bulls, and things were different then. I mean, the semen distributors back then, they would buy and contract sometimes as many as 15,000 units, which was a lot of semen on a bull. I mean, they'd pay you half down, and before they got the other half, you'd get it. And those bulls seemed like back then, I can remember Throttle and Flush, that there was times there that those bulls done 1,500 to 2,000 units of semen a week. There's not very many of these guys will do that anymore.
Right.
There's a lot of that's bred out of these cattle, and those bulls were fertile. I mean, really fertile. Semen quality was unbelievable, and they made a lot of it. They were just a little bit different than the cattle now. Not taking anything away from anything now.
Right.
These cattle are so good now and so much fun to look at, but they're just a whole different era.
Mm-hmm.
Corey, have you ever seen this bleeding purple ad that Christy Collins, I guess, helped build Dean, that had Throttle and Flush, and
Oh yeah,
even on the very back of it, it had Happy Trails, and so
yeah.
But,
Yeah, I was probably a freshman in college, and it definitely made you want to look at Kephart rules. That's for sure.
Hey, Dean,
Corey, you pinned that
guys
up in your dorm.
What? Yeah, I'm sure I did. Now, you're probably not wrong right there. Yeah, that's
Hey,
a fact.
Dean, tell
Well,
these guys what you
it
told
was
me about printing.
hard paper and a lot of color, and the ads were just not made like that. It was just different, just a little different.
Right.
It jumped.
Hey,
It jumped out.
tell these guys real quick about where you had to go to have that thing printed in its day.
Well, it was done at Dallas, and then the girls that was on that thing, that they were just a modeling agent, just took them some caps, and they had to cut off shorts and tank tops and got their pictures made. And it's a pretty simple deal, you know. Probably work all right today.
Right. Yeah. There you go, Griswold. He's throwing it.
Yeah, his wife might not go for that.
I was gonna
No,
say,
I don't think that'll go here.
you need to get Macy and Jeannie some shorts, and you'll be in good shape.
And I mean, I told that story on that podcast, and you know, you're going to offend people when you do certain things. And that was back before texting and cell phones and all that other stuff. And I got a call one night, and it was a lady from New York, and she had got one of the magazines and got everything. And boy, I mean, she ripped me one now saying that's pretty sorry to try to make a living on something like that. And I listened to her for a while, and finally I told her, I said, ma'am, if I want to let my daughters help me on my ads, I will. And she went to apologize. And so it was pretty funny, but that's about the only time I ever had a comeback that was worth a flip at all. But at least I got her and she shut up. So.
Oh, man. So, along with this, and I'll throw this out there, we talk about marketing semen just a minute, but I visited a little bit with Brad Hook, and we'll get to his bull a little bit later. But he said that you, Dean, were the first that he ever remembered of somebody throwing a couple of semen tanks in a Western hauler and driving the country, not only visiting with guys and building relationships, but delivering semen to their door. What year would that have been, and what made you start that instead of selling semen?
Man, I don't remember what year it was, but we loaded them up and we went on the road, and it was always just me. You can't find anybody's going to be gone a month, like that. And just went from ranch to ranch and pay phones at night, and you called some of them other ranchers that didn't run a lot of cows, and they'd meet you at town at the motel and bring their cans, and you'd sell them semen. And when we run out of semen, we come home and filled them back up, and away we went again.
Hey, you say selling semen, Dean. I know you probably swapped them semen for some of their best cows is what you
I
did.
do that. Yeah, that's all right. I mean, it all worked out on stuff like that. But, crazy thing, I don't ever remember pulling in a ranch and a rancher and asking a rancher to buy semen. I never said a word, and I can't think of one that didn't buy semen. That before you left, they'd go, "What do you got in your semen tank?" And you'd tell them, I said, "Can we buy some?" And that's just about how it went all the time. It's so different then than it is now, where there's guys, I'm sure, begging to sell some semen. There's so many bulls, though. I mean, we're talking about, there wasn't very many bulls to buy semen off of back then. And now everybody's got some bulls, and a lot of nice bulls.
Right. So Christy and I visited earlier. We tried to get a video, and we have it. We can't get it loaded right yet, and we promised our people we will get it on our Facebook where the country can see it. Christy said, as risque and as that was in its day, nothing had the industry talking like the picture of Double Stuff did. Talk about that bull.
About Double Stuff?
Yeah, she said that when the picture of Double Stuff come out, it was a whole different kind of craze.
Right. Actually, Colby was a kid, and Chrissy was getting started, and we clipped them here at the house and took a picture right out in the yard. And anyway, and that was a bull. He had some of the problems that a lot of them's got now that we didn't know he had. Just stupid haired, big legged. He was dirty, and we didn't know he was dirty. And at that time, he was kind of there's a bunch of them that blow him away right now, but in his day was just out there.
Gotcha. Where did you come up with him at, dude?
Yeah, kind of a crazy story. Wendell Dunn, he said, Wendell actually found the bull, and he was at San Angelo, and he said, "Let's fly down there and look at him." We had a neighbor that had a little 4-seater plane over here at Elk City, and we hopped in it and we flew to San Angelo. And that bull was so skinny, and he had a broken back leg. He had 10-inch horns, and I mean, he looked pretty rough, but man, I mean, he had the bone and feet and hip. I mean, I just could picture him being fat, and I never forget Wendell saying, "Man, I wasted your trip to come and look at that bull." And I said, "Wendell, this is the best trip we've made in a long time. This one's going to help the shorthorn deal quite a bit. This is a good deal." So anyway, we bought the bull, cosmetic dehorning. His leg healed up where you couldn't hardly tell it. And after we got him fat enough, we clipped him and pictured him, and the rest was history.
Wow.
But he had broke his leg when you bought him.
He had a broken back leg. Yep.
How about it?
Had
That's optimism right there.
10-inch horns. Should have weighed 1,200 pounds, and he weighed 700. So skinny, and there was so much hair hanging off that thing. He looked like a Highlander, right out in the middle of the mesquites, the cactus, and the javelina hogs. I mean, he was in rough country.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And then the next one in this shorthorn. I mean, honestly, these are the two bulls that probably they made the shorthorn steer game. Really, I mean, they put it on the map. And the other one that had a huge impact for you was Double Vision. Tell us a little bit about how he came to be, Dean.
I was buying cows. I, for the life of me, can't remember who I bought his mother from, but I was in Nebraska, or I think I was in I think I bought his mother out of South Dakota, and she was a purebred Cunha cow, a red and white cow, and anytime I bought a red cow, or painted cow, or roan cow, or something like that, I let Wendell have them because he was running the shorthorns. And actually, I went over there and he was fixing to work calves and was fixing to cut him. And I told Wendell, I said, "Man, are you sure you want to cut that calf?" And he said, "Well, make a good steer, won't he?" And I said, "Make a good steer and a better bull." And he said, "We'll kick him out and leave him a bull. I'm going to give you half of him." And we took him to Denver and displayed him, and he raised some nice shorthorns. He's a good shorthorn bull, and those two still can raise some cattle. It's I ate out a few cows to maybe double stuff last year and sold some shorthorn plus heifers, nice heifers out of the deal.
Yeah, you still see some guys every year up in South Dakota here. You'll see a double one of them kicked out every now and again for sure.
Yep. But that's how he come about. He was out of a really good red and white maned cow that, for the life of me, I can't remember who I bought that thing from, but she was a good one.
Yep.
So piling through this evolution series, I mean, we get all the way to Throttle, we get to Flush, and then now people start to cross over these shorthorn genetics back in here at some point, and we start injecting some of this extra hair on these things. John, your program at the time was probably Show Steer Trading, but we just visited a minute about the end, of Chill Factor and what he did from a maternal standpoint. What was your thoughts on Chill Factor about this same time crossing over with some of these bulls that we've been visiting with Dean about?
Well, Chill Factor, the best part about, I mean, you can tell by looking at that picture, he's pretty tubey looking, but he was out of the original 066 cow, who was a little short, chubby cow that was just built perfect, had perfect udder. I mean, perfect size. And, today, if you look at Chill Factor, you'd think, how could he sire anything? But there was just something about him. He made really good daughters out of little Angus cows. And that's kind of the first bull we raised that did anything.
Mm-hmm.
And was he a cold front, John?
His mother, his mother was actually a cold front. I guess I told that wrong. Out of the old 066. And cold front was he was a double bred Cunha bull from California and Wyoming.
Yep.
And so she was a cold front, and then we bred her to Cunha and got chill factor.
Oh, so he was a direct Cunha. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Corey, what's interesting is we're sitting here talking about chill factor and we're looking at white belly, white flanks, white feet. And last week, Bob May and Paul Clapp visited about in that day, it didn't matter how good the cattle were. If they had any sort of white on them, nobody wanted anything to do with them. John's talking about how chill factor had a huge impact. And here we'll visit with Dean too about Meyer 734, two bulls that, you know, white bellies, white flanks, white feet, things like that. Guys, what was your thoughts on that? Why extra white on them cattle in that day? Those guys said you just didn't matter how good they were, you didn't do anything with them. You two take it to the next level and promote them as maternal sires.
But that was probably 6 years difference there between Sugar Ray's heyday and before we got into Meyer 734. Would that be about right, or 6 or more probably?
Yeah, that's probably about right, something like that. But you know, I'll talk about chill factor just a little bit, and you guys will agree. We pictured cattle a lot different, and you clip cattle a lot different. And I'm looking at the chill factor's picture where you clip the underline on this guy. You don't do that anymore. Things change so much on them things, the way they're fitted and the angle they take the pictures and stuff. And so, to me, that bull is still impressive looking and really good looking, and was always good looking. I mean, you wanted some of them things to look as big and extreme as you could. And John talking about him being out of a smaller cow and stuff. That wasn't no monster bull. That was a bull that was ahead of his time right there. And that's one reason he still works. That's why his daughters are still good.
Right.
And,
but it
and I
didn't
learned
bother
this. I probably learned this from Dean as much as anybody. Like sometimes when I'd go to Dean's, he didn't care what they were. He didn't care what they looked like. He was more interested in how they were bred. I mean, of course, he wanted them good looking, but let's say he bred all his Ethanol cows to Throttle. I mean, or all his certain bloodlines. And I learned that from him and some other people. And like, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Cerveza's mom, who was a whiskey out of a chill factor, Dale Newman and Todd Thrasher had that 1829. And they picked it. They bred all their Angus cows, Skyline Angus cows, to chill factor. They kept the 10 best ones, and they give their 11th pick to their hired man named Manuel. Well, when they sold those cows, Manuel wanted to sell his cow, and that was the 11th pick out of that calf crop, and those would have been unbelievable cattle. So, when you breed cows, a lot of people say, well, what's she look like? Well, this one needs this, so you got to use this bull. I agree with that some, but I agree. I breed them more like, how are they bred? And sometimes you don't have to, it doesn't matter what she looks like. It's the genetics are behind her and what bulls click on certain bloodlines.
100%. Yep. I think it's still like that today. You kind of get wondering when you go to a group of cattle and there's 100 cows and there's 40 sires, you know, what's going on some of those things. But no, that old breeding goes back. I mean, if one thing works and this other one ain't quite as good, you know, I had a little group of 15 cows one time, and they were all dang near sisters. Every one of those females raised a steer that won a major show. wasn't doing no embryo work, but there was some better looking than others, but some of the other ones still sired just as well, or had just as good a calf as the better looking one.
Right.
Like when I'd go out to Dean, when you go everywhere else and look at club calves, that's when I was just wanted to buy a show steer. But when you go everywhere else and look at it, you go, what's the cow? Oh, semi-Angus, main Angus, semi-Angus, main Angus. You go to K-bars, and that really, he was one of the guys that really got me thinking about it, or was the guy. And my dad probably, because he was big on genetics. But when you went there, she was an Epinal, she was a Cunha, she was a, he knew exactly what they were and exactly how to mate those certain lines of cattle. Yeah. And I think he was way ahead of his time. Now we all talk about, well, what's the mother out of, but back in the 90s or 80s, whenever, no one even, she's just a main cow, and that really changed in this time frame right here.
Gotcha.
Well, we talked about it earlier. There were some progressive breeders that in the early 80s kind of dove into this main breed, but it was kind of the late 80s, early 90s when people dove into chill factor. Dean, you had a bull that was no doubt about it, the hottest cabin ease bull in the country back in them days was Witch Doctor. Tell us a little bit about how that bull came about and the effects that obviously those cows were really good.
Bill Cody lives in Texas. He had bought that bull, and he called me and wanted to know if I was interested in him, and I said I'm interested to look at him, and I did, and I wound up buying half of Witch Doctor, and then Bill Thorne wound up with part of Witch Doctor, and anyway, a bull that's still kind of like Chill Factor still works today. We still sell semen on Witch Doctor calving ease. He's clean and they're not hard calving, and they're good cattle and make good daughters. Kind of go clean up some messes every once in a while with some of those bulls. And there's guys just need to clean some deals up, and some of them will do it.
Right. Gotcha. Where did Meyer 734 fly in this time frame, Dean?
Well, Meyer, I was actually buying cattle on some videos, and when I'm talking about videos, it wasn't like the videos now. They pictured and videoed them, and they sent you a video, and you put it in your VCR, and you watched it on TV, and you called them on the phone, and you made your deal or you didn't. And I was John Christensen in South Dakota had bought him from that Myers Ranch, and I have no idea what the bull cost when he bought him. He bought him out of sale and I was looking at 100 bred cows, and they were letting them out one at a time, videoing them in the snow. And at the end, this yearling bull walks across, and nub horn, white-legged semi-bull, but man, his structure was so much better than a lot of the semis, and he wasn't great, big, and hard made like a lot of the semi cattle. And I called him up and had him price the bull, and he reared back and priced him for $1,600, and I bought him.
Whoa!
And I thought that Meyer was probably, especially on oldie cows and cows just like some of the Angus cows that John had purchased from Tim Oldie, and those cattle, those smaller cattle like that. I told everybody, if you got an Angus cow and you don't know what to breed her to that bull, and it's not going to calve hard, and you'll have a replacement daughter if you don't sell her, but they won't be very hard to sell. So, and that's kind of how he come about. And I still got a few of those Meyer daughters running around, and they're moderate and great uddered and good attitude and raised some pretty good cattle out of them.
Right.
Boy, he sure did. The ones I had over the years, the udder structure on those cows was absolutely outstanding for that breed of cattle for sure. They're unbelievable.
I had some satellite herds I was furnishing semen to, and they were AIing a lot of cows to Meyer, and I would contract all the heifers and buy the heifers, and I'd buy the bulls and sell some of them things. If you could stand to keep them till there's twos, they made nice half-blood commercial bulls. They calved easy, they growed good, and they brought as much as one could bring at town. And then every once in a while, some of them quarter bloods made good females. But Dan Sullivan come out and he was wanting to buy some half-blood semi-heifers out of Meyer. And I had 100 of them, the front end of them, and I had them on wheat. And we were blessed with rain, and the wheat pasture was 10 inches tall, and they were fat. And I'd had them all freeze branded, and they were open heifers, just getting ready to breed them. And we was out there, and finally I was out there 5 or 6 hours with Dan, and I said, "Are you getting about done?" And he said, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to get done." And I said, "Well, I'm going to pick you up at dark." So I left him there and went back, and old Dan was still walking through them things. He wanted to buy 10 heifers, and we fixed him up, but it took him all day. But they were peas in a pod kind of cattle, you know. That bull made them all look a lot alike.
Oh gosh.
Yep.
So
Hey.
John, go ahead, Corey.
Well, I was just going to say, John, we talked about Chill Factory being your first one and kind of put you on the map, but there's no doubt about it. Undeniably, Irish Whiskey's the bull that built G-Bar. Tell us the whiskey story and what that bull has done for your program in the last, how many years has it been now?
Well, it was a kind of an unbelievable story. I mean, Todd Thrasher and Dale Newman raised that bull, and they called me and they said, "Man, we got a pretty nice bull on this cow." They said he's really good. And I said, well, what are you going to do with him? And they said, "Well, we're going to bring him down to your place." So they dropped in June, I think it was, they dropped him and his mother off down here. And this calf was unbelievable. And anyway, they said we'd give you part of him to sell him in the sale. And that's when Christy just said, let us in the exposure sale. And we sold that bull there. And that was when we also had the Birkeland herd in South Dakota. And we used him up there the first year. And to be real honest, we used him on the bottom cows the first year because we're like, man, we don't know what he's going to do. We really like him, but we were using Chill Factor, and he was really working. And the next year, I mean, the best calves, every one was a whiskey. And after that, we just blanket bred those cows up there and here to whiskey. And to this day, I don't know if I've ever used a bull in our program where there was no throwaways. I mean, the bulls were good. The steers that you cut, Roger Toole bought them every year. I mean, he said they were the best cattle he ever fed. The females, there's just no throwaways with that bull. And that's what I liked about him, more than any other bull that I've ever used around here. They're just, I'd say less than 5% was it that you didn't do anything with. Other than that, you could sell them.
Absolutely.
The value of whiskey. Out of the gate, they were good cattle, yes, but then all of a sudden, these guys started using these, the whiskey cow in the club calf world. I hate to say the club calf world, to raise those show steers. But we go back to the maternal side. That bull bred true all the way through, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he worked. Like Monopoly whiskey was really popular. I mean, he just clicked on those kind of cattle. He clicked with, that line just really, really clicked with those club calf bulls. And he had a knack of giving them just an extra look that is hard to get.
Yeah.
So what year was Whiskey born? Do you remember, John?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he sold in 2001.
2001. Because that's what I mean, many people have commented to me, his staying power might be, I mean, that semen will still bring something in an online sale today. His staying power, as far as any bull, is sure got to be one of the longest tenure that has ever been seen in the industry, probably.
Well, just right before we came on here, Jeannie and I ran 10 heifers in that were in heat, and there was a whiskey in there. And I mean, and we ran some really good heifers in there. I'm not sure she wasn't the best one. I mean, they're still hard, for us. I love whiskey.
I heard Matt Sims say one time that he was certain Dean Kephart buried Meyer 734 upside down so he could still collect him. And I'm thinking that maybe you did the same thing with whiskey. I'm not saying he's not died, but I always laugh about that when I heard that. So
there was whiskey bulls in your sale this year, wasn't there, John?
Oh yeah.
And they sure bred heifers in the heifer sale.
Yeah. And everybody says, oh, you can't sell a PHA bull. Well, I mean, they sold right along with the, along with the clean ones. I mean, the guys that know how to use them and you can't beat their daughters.
Right.
Yeah. And then you touched on him earlier. The Cerveza bull was kind of the next stage of evolution from the whiskey line, wasn't he, John?
Yeah, we went to the sale of Newman's again and Thrashers, and that Cerveza was sucking that 1829, and they were selling that pair, and they were sold them in this calf that was to this day that might be one of the best looking bull calves I've ever seen. And here's this poor cow. She'd been in heat, out there. The hair on them she still had hair except on her rump, and it was just slicked off. She looked absolutely horrible. But this bull calf was stunning. And he sold them. They sold them in catalog order. And he was lot 56, him and his mother. I swear that was the longest 55 head I've ever seen sell before. I was just a ball of nerves till that pair ran in there. But anyway,
Yeah.
Bruce West and I went out there and saw that pair.
No kidding. And then after that, you got the patent line, which was was he a Cerveza or whiskey?
He was a whiskey, but the reason he was so good is this is about the time PHA got to be hot. Everybody, oh, you can't have PHA, you can't have PHA. And Patton had that same kind of look, and he was clean.
Yep.
So that's why, there's some really good daughters out of Patton, but he didn't have quite the bone, quite the hair that the whiskeys and the Cervezas had.
Yeah.
But that kind of goes along with the clean and dirty deal also.
Sure. Absolutely.
So we talk about clean and dirty and the PHA and that, but it was in this era that we're talking about the genetic defects that start to arise from. Would you say it's because of some of the crossbreeding that was going on between trying to configure the mains and the shorthorns and trying just to make this next little piece? Is that how? Just seems like as many of you guys that were out there building show cattle at the time, why all of a sudden did PHA and TH expose itself all at once, it seems like?
Well, I remember it was right before or right during the exposure. We kept hearing rumblings about PHA, and Christy was trying to tell me about it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, because they called it a deadly you know, it was deadly. And I'm like, we've had 1,000 calves out of whiskey and have never had, I don't even know what you're talking about. But I didn't know, you know, you got to have 2 carriers, as everybody knows now. But then we didn't know, like, there's no way this bull has got something wrong with him, because how could you breed 1,000 cows to him and never have a problem? So anyway, and then everybody knows for several years, you know, and even to this day, I mean, I don't like to promote dirty ones, but I still like them better.
Right.
I mean, they're almost always better. They're almost always bigger boned, bigger nut. I mean, the bulls are bigger scrotals. They got more hair. They're just, most of the time, they're better cattle.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But and really, I mean, it wasn't a single-handedly Irish whiskey, but he pulled the sled for a lot of that, just because he was used so broad spectrum back in those days. But between whiskey and draft pick, boy, you could trace a lot of that back to them 2 sires, probably, in terms of where that PHA originated. But like you said, John, they were so good. Everybody was using them because they were huge footed, and it's just no different. Like Dean said, those shorthorns come out, double stuff come out, and he was probably, I mean, you'd have to go through the pedigrees, but he had to have been one of the first. He was dang sure one of the first hot sires that thought about having TH in him. That dang sure put a little flame on that deal.
Right. So the whiskey craze, when it hit, there's it's undeniable. Everybody in the country, I don't even say it wasn't a love-hate thing, because I think everybody loved the whiskeys. I think the main breeders loved the whiskeys. I think the club calf breeders loved the whiskeys. Dean, not to make anybody feel like we're past the K-bar time, what was your thought process, being maternal driven, really main maternal driven to get going? What was your thought on whiskey and when he came about?
Well, and I think John, probably after everybody figured out on the PHA, John sold some cattle in the exposure sale that I think was probably tested. Seemed like, I mean, I was selling cattle in that sale also. And I don't know how many of them heifers I bought that John had in that deal that was PHA carriers, because they were just like John said, their feet were bigger, their bone was bigger. And I didn't, and I mean, I got a lot of PHA cows, but I don't have any bulls that's a PHA bull around. And I think if you know what you're doing, it's a tick of an advantage. Just, I mean, they're just, the diameter of their bone is bigger, and their joints look better, and their feet are bigger. And I mean, it didn't bother me. Now, I did not keep any daughters out of those unless I tested them for PHA. And I mean, but when I was using TH on PHA, and if you didn't have your mess ups on some of them, it seemed like it worked pretty good.
Right.
But I mean, I get the whole deal with people that say, I am not using anything. I don't want anything to do with the PHA. And there's some maternal deals that they want them 100% clean, and power to them, man. There's some good triple clean cattle out there. You know, I mean, there's some worse things probably out there than them when it all comes down to it. When someday we'll be talking DS pretty hard. I mean, it looks like all that can be a tough and bad deal, but I think you need to. Somebody's going to get to make them $30 a head to test them and see what they got. I guess is what I'm saying. Somebody's going to do all right on that part.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I'd like to add
you
something
just
right
need to
here,
know.
too.
I think you need to know, and you need to pay attention, and you better keep you some records, because I know John's had some. I've had some. About anybody's done it. A double pH deal, when you have one of them, is not the most pleasant deal you can have.
Right.
No, it's not. But what I always, when Dr. Beaver was trying to figure this out, this PHA deal, I talked to him all the time. And I was, you know, as we saw this evolving, I mean, I was like, he was like, you know, in your Punnett Square, this is how many will have PHA. And we could never, I don't know if anybody's ever explained it to me, why that might be true. Only 50% of them have it, but why is it I mean, 50% have it, but it's the 90% of the ones that have it are the best ones in the pen. I don't know if I said that right, but it's got tons in there, and half of them
I think that's
dirty.
kind of what I was saying. I mean, it's like those heifers I thought you sold. They didn't bring as much as your clean heifers in the exposure sale, but far as what I needed, they were pennies on the dollar cheaper, you know. I mean, they were bigger legged, bigger bone, more muscle. I wasn't going to breed them to a PH bull. I had plans for what I was going to do, and that was I was going to use a TH bull on them. But
right.
And now, I mean, I don't want all my cows dirty, trust me, but it's fun on some of them if you keep up with it and you pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just talked about you wanted some TH, and which leads us to probably the final bull for tonight's episode. Brad Hook promoted a bull, Heat Seeker, and that Heat Seeker craze still today is as prevalent as it ever was. You know, you talk about a bull that impacted an industry for a long term and long standing time. John and I were able to visit with each other real quick at the Oklahoma Beef Expo this week about tonight's episode. And when I mentioned something about Heat Seeker, John, what was it you told me this weekend about your thoughts on Heat Seeker and what he did for the business?
Well, to me, he was the bull that kind of went in, you know, we went from Throttle, Flush, those kind of cattle. And then when we got Heat Seeker, he kind of changed it all to where we got these new, you know, all these new bulls that got more hair, just deeper bodied. I mean, just shag. I'd say he would be the bull that led to all these bulls now that we have.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Yeah.
He had a shot of key on the top side out of Tyrone Hullinger's the bull. I think that's right. And then he had he went back to short on the bottom.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. He told me that I think he said back on his side, it goes back to the old Improver 145. That's where the shorthorn came from. But he said, you know, in terms of the hair craze and things like that, Brad and I visited yesterday. There's no doubt he's a busy guy. He knew about this. He's busy in Ohio trying to get pictures done. And we visited for over an hour about this bull. And he said, I don't want to take any of the credit, all the credit for what he did, because he said prior to Heat Seeker, there was Double Stuff and Warhorse. And when you talk about injecting hair into cattle, Heat Seeker craze happened because he was one of the very first black crossbreds that could inject hair the way Warhorse and Double Stuff could. So,
well, Larry Campbell, that owned part of Heat Seeker, for I don't know how many years, Larry wound up buying, unless I made a show heifer and sold her, he'd send a semi out on weaning, and I think we'd put about 110 of those full flush and full throttle heifers and stuff on there, and that's what they wound up breeding them things to Heat Seeker. But they complemented each other very well, and there's no doubt that Heat Seeker and making Heat Wave and continue on the bulls that's hairy and hot today, you know. I mean, that's where it started, and that's the ones that did it. Right.
Yeah. Brad Hook said that when Scott Coffey called him about this bull calf, he said, what are we going to do with him? He said, we need to cut him. And he said that at that time, who made who was the man. He said, it's undeniable prior to, I guess there was a year apart. He displayed that bull at Hoosier Beef Congress as a calf. Who Made Who was there as a 2-year-old. He said, but he said that he said he learned something from Phil Lochner, and he said that Phil Lochner had said it's the little bulls. I wrote this down. The little bulls are always the truest breeders. And he said when he saw that bull calf and he was little, he said, I knew then if this is ever going to be one that's going to be a true breeder, it's him. And he said, I'm telling you, the first year, everybody said that bull needs cut. That bull needs cut. That bull needs cut. And, you know, he talked about Dean promoting bulls, driving the country. And he said, you know, I was fortunate that when I had that bull, the pasture to purple, the internet craze had just started, and you know everybody knows him and the internet and this and that. But it was interesting. He said that bull would sell 27,000 units a year when he was in peak production. And he said when he died, he said, now we did go up on that semen and we charged $35 for it when he died. So he said that's changed, you know, drastically when a bull dies, what a guy's willing to give for it. But anyway, it was just unique visiting with Brad about him. But you guys, y'all had the cows. John, you had the whiskey cows, and Dean, you had the throttles and the flush cows. Corey, what did you say earlier? That Dean had ran an ad about don't keep the heifers out of
Yeah,
these.
yeah. One of those print ads that said right in there, and I remember people talking about it up here, just thinking it was because you know, I mean, hell, not saying people aren't honest about their bulls, but in your ad, you're supposed to pump people up about your bulls, and in Throttle's ad, it said right on there, this is a terminal sire, not made to keep replacements out of this bull. Basically, I mean, saying that you're supposed to use them to make just basically make steers out of them. And, you know, I think people appreciated it. I mean, I would imagine, Dean, tell me if I'm wrong, was that just because of the calving dystocia that you were worried about
Well,
males
passing
having problems?
on calving problems a little bit, and maybe the key part in the deal, and you know, there's no doubt that some of them throttle daughters made really good cows. We were probably wrong, is what we were, but that at the time, that's what we felt like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Which is not a good promotional deal. Don't use this bull if you want to keep a daughter, you know.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, just the feedback that that I remember hearing about ranchers up in this country talking about it. I mean, they appreciated your honesty about it. I do think it helps any cattleman's credibility when they're honest about what they're seeing with a calf crop out of a bull. There's no doubt about it.
Right. But you know, growing up, young kid, you know, high school, college, you heard the full flush chill factor. You heard as we got older, we heard the heat wave whiskeys. We heard at that time, you hear the heat seeker full flush deal was a hit. And you two, you know, obviously were responsible for that maternal side in there. But did the next generation of sires that still impacted you guys still marketing semen and offspring from your bulls, didn't it?
Oh, for sure. We kind of went the way, I mean, I've always liked the female side, and I always liked pedigrees, and so we've kind of taken ours to the, you know, we want to sell people stuff that makes good females and bulls they can sell. And we're lucky enough that some of those lines that we sell click really good with some of these club calf bulls. That's just kind of that's the kind of cattle that we like. And that's the kind, you know, I've always been drawn to more moderate, chubby, good looking females. I've always been like that. That's what I used to see when I went to K bars. You know, just, I love those kind of cows. And I think those are, I mean, in my heart, I believe those are better cows most of the time. And I just think that we got a passion for selling that kind of semen that will make people money and make good females.
Right.
You know, well, it's been great to see. The first episode we had Bob May, Paul Clapp, two people that obviously Paul was a huge mentor of Bob May's, and I think obviously from the respect you've shown John to Dean, obviously you guys no introduction in terms of the type of cattle and cows that you guys have raised, and obviously you've learned a lot from Dean. So it's just been fun, I guess, the first two episodes of this deal to watch how two guys in Bob May and John Griswold learned from guys prior to them, kind of how to do this deal.
Right. Yeah. Well, guys, I can tell you, it's been our pleasure to have you on tonight and visit about some of your bulls and the impact that they've made, not only in their heyday, but they're still making today. We can always say, well, those bulls are long gone, but in reality, we didn't get to where we're at today without going right through you two guys and the impact, not only as from sire side, but a maternal side. And as we continue this journey next week, I think we have Phil Lautner on to visit about Phil's bulls that will obviously build off some of you guys' stuff too. So thanks for taking time to visit with Corey and I tonight on Cattle Drive.
Yeah, I got one more story to tell about K-Bar real quick, and it's this deal he told me. He won't even remember this, but it still burns in my mind. He told me this one time. We bought a steer one time that was out of kind of a cold bred cow. He was a full throttle out of just a black baldy cow. And I told Dean, I'm like, isn't that unbelievable how good throttle works on just a cold bred cow? And Dean, I'll never forget him saying, he goes, yeah, but he said, just try to use him on them good bred cows and see what you get. And I mean, I've never forgot that. It rings in my brain how he said that. I probably didn't say it exactly how he said it, but I mean, you get the drift. Your cows need to be bred good if you want to raise good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And two guys that today, you're as prevalent today in this business. Both of you are. Dean, you still get after it each day. You had me nervous earlier today when you said, I'm going to hustle to get there by 7, but we're still calving cows and doing things. So it's nice to know you guys are still as relevant today as you ever were. And two guys that don't mind answering the phone and answering a guy's question, I know. So thanks for taking the time with us knuckleheads tonight.
Hey, I appreciate you asking me to come, and I know John feels the same way. I mean, it's an honor that you ask.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Well, hey, we're going to shut this thing down, but when we do, we always shut it down with something we call Cattlemen's for Christ. And as we know, Jason Spence, auctioneer in our business, was lost this last week in a tragic accident. And there was some stuff flying around the internet, but something that caught my wife caught this. There was a print a little while back. Somebody had asked him, I wish I had it all, but it was Live the Western Lifestyle. It was a question and answer segment with C. Jason Spence, and there was a particular spot that she zoomed in on, and that's at some point they had asked him, how do you want people to remember you? He said, I want them to realize that without God in your life, the long term will be one of out making the sale forever. That's the reason I start every sale I have with a prayer. Although in a competitive industry, I want people to realize that our job as parents and our job as leaders is to not just get to the backdrop, but to teach our kids the most important lesson is to how to get to the pearly gates. And I felt like as I saw that float around, I thought of you two guys, and we'll close with that, but also ask you two, in all of the things that you've done in this business, in your families, Dean, you first, what is something that sticks out to you that you're most proud of?
Oh, I don't know. We've had some great times when our kids was showing, just families being together and just going and doing things together and meeting so many good people very knowledgeable about the business. Just unbelievable people. I mean, I know people in several states, and without something like this, I would have never done it. I'm just a old farm boy from Canute, Oklahoma, and get out and meet people from other places. Is an honor every day.
Right.
It still is.
Gotcha. What about you, John? All the things you've accomplished and still accomplishing. I don't want you to think you're a has-been by that question. What is it for you? What's
Well, that's the easiest question you've asked me all night. My wife, Jeannie, and my kids. That's more of a that's better than anything we've ever accomplished in the cattle business.
Right.
So
Awesome. Good deal. Well, guys, thanks. I know Corey feels the same way. This is a fun, exciting series. Next week, we will have Phil Lautner on, and we're going to visit with him about the impact Lautner Farms has made in the Evolution series. So, guys, thanks, and appreciate your time.
Hey, appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.